hockey. Yeah.
My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
And welcome to a Monday edition of Judd's Hockey Show. Judd, AJ Fredrickson, of course, Jesse Pierce will join us for the midweek edition. But since the season is starting this week, the Wild in St. Louis on Thursday, thought we would join you to talk about some breaking news from over the weekend, or some news, I guess, not breaking at this point. Filip Gustavsson, age, signed to a 5-year extension, $34 million. It's going to kick in next season. The AAV is 6.8 for the goaltender. So here's what I've noticed now, and I think with Kaprizov signing, the puzzle is starting to make sense. Obviously, if Kirill doesn't sign the extension, and by the way, no one else is signing extensions. McDavid, if you look around the league, Kempe in Los Angeles, Eichel in Vegas. So good work by the Wild to get that done. But if you start to look around what the Wild is doing from a roster construction standpoint financially now, I think it makes some sense. Or I think it makes a lot of sense. So starting with Kirill, who's now signed a contract that starts next year, 8 years, 8 times 17. Let's go through what they've done in the last couple of years, all right? So Matt Boldy is going into year 3 of a contract that he signed 7 years, $49 million. So 7 times 7, which with the new cap is going to be a complete bargain.
Yes.
Brock Faber, a year ago, I believe, in July, signs an 8-year extension, 8 times 8.5. He's in year 2. So Boldy is 24, still just 24. Faber is 23. You got to go in the way back machine a little bit, but it still fits into a pattern here a little bit. Joel Eriksson Ek, who is now 28, signs a contract that he's going into year 5 of, but it's an 8-year contract, so 3 years left. 8 times 5.25, which if you think Boldy is a steal, that's an even bigger steal. And then it's not a long-term contract, but even locking up Rossi on a bridge deal at the age of 24, 3 times 15. So you look at Gus here, 6.8 is very fair. But the other thing too is, these guys are taking security, and the salary cap, no question about it, we know is going up, and there is far more financial stability in the entire league, which means the cap should continue to grow. It will continue to grow, we know for sure, because it's been stated for the next 3 years. So I think the Gustafsson contract actually fits pretty nicely into what the Wild is trying to build here. And obviously the linchpin to the entire conversation is now done, and that was the Kirill Kaprizov contract.
Yeah, I think once we're a couple years removed from these extensions and we see like the cap has risen to, I think we're going to look back, and the GMs that have almost like jumped the gun or rushed in a sense to extend guys long term before and took the gamble of, we think the cap's going up, we're not exactly sure how high it's going to go up, and then so you get your Brock Faber extended, you get your Matt Boldy extended. Now it's going to continue to rise, and I think a lot of cap projectionists and how the financial stuff works is it's going to exceed what it's currently projected to go at for the next 3 years and continue to rise. The Wild might be in a really good situation 4 years from now to, like, you have these guys still locked up for 2, 3, 4 years or more at times, but they're going to have a lot of room to work with because of how much the cap's going up. I think this is a great deal. I mean, everybody was speculating, I think at least 7 for Gustafsson. So for the Wild, I think they come away and say, we probably won the day. From my understanding, he really wanted to stay here. He probably could have gotten more on the market, but he made a point of saying, I want to stay in Minnesota and play with the Wild. So that's good on him. It is goaltending. This goes back to, I think, the conversation that we had or have had previously, which is like, sometimes they're like the relievers in baseball, to use your term. Some years guys are just really, really good. Some guys they're not, sometimes they're not, and it kind of can be a roller coaster. I'm anxious to see in more of an excitement way of, is Gustafsson going to be the guy we got last year, or is he going to be the guy that we maybe have seen the past 3 or 4 years where he's a slow start in the season, and then by mid-November he really hits his stride, but then he maybe takes a taper off, and it kind of is up and down, or is it going to be like last year where he is night in, night out, the deciding factor for why this team is consistently being competitive And granted, they had half a season last year where they didn't have Kirill Kaprizov, so he really stepped up. But if guys are healthy, I think the defense in front probably should be better at times than what it was last year. I'm still hard pressed to think they couldn't have waited a month.
Oh, sure.
And maybe there's, I mean, not maybe, there's probably things way behind the scenes that we just don't know about. That's like, we have to get this deal done. But from my understanding, the way that like Mike Russo of the Athletic reported was this got done in a matter of days. Like it very quickly got put together where it's, we want you. Okay, cool. What do you think? Okay, here's our number. Here's our number. Well, we don't really want to go more than this. And the Wild, I guess, were very adamant of we want to stay below 7. So put on them one for holding and not giving in a very quick timetable. But I do think it wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world if you wait. But overall, I would applaud probably both sides here, especially Bill Guerin and the Wild for getting this done under $7 million, because that's a big win in my book.
And if this contract was done by itself without sort of a pattern, I guess I would be a little bit more hesitant about it, because I agree with you. You didn't have, like, I'm sure that Gus wanted to get it wrapped up, but you didn't have to. And it's 5 years so there's no move protection immediately in the last 3 years of the contract. He gets a 15-team no trade clause. So there's 15 teams that he could veto a trade to. A lot of this depends also on, does Wallstedt develop as a first-round pick, and does he start to push Gus out? At some point in time too. The Marc-Andre Fleury sharing the goal type of thing is not normal. Like that's not the norm. I mean,
no.
First of all, Flower was older. Second of all, he came back, but I think he knew in last season exactly what the parameters were. I think he appreciated it. I think he was fine. I think he was a great support system for Gus. But don't expect Wallstedt and Gus to be like the same thing, and for one of them to gracefully just take the back seat. Those guys want to play. They're both young. Gustavsson is 27. So I'm curious to see where this goes. Like, having two good goaltenders is awesome. Having two starting caliber goaltenders is difficult because both are going to think that they should probably be starting the majority of the games. But when you start to look at how the Wild is fitting this in, and then back to your point, which is the salary cap, we don't know how high it's going to go. Knock on wood, it continues to go very high. Yeah. But, it's funny that it feels like the Kaprizov contract, which is the only big contract done on the market, I think, so far. It feels like there's a sticker shock of, oh my God, what's going on here? Well, the cap's going up. Like, Kirill Kaprizov at 17 in a couple of years could be a complete bargain. If he stays healthy, if he continues, and he's only 28 right now, to be the player that he's been, that's going to be a bargain. So we do have to sort of, fortunately, we have to adjust our expectations back to what should the players get. And for Kirill Kaprizov to get $17 million per season is not outrageous, and will become, as the years go on, less outrageous. And, the other thing too is contracts are going to continue to go up. So this Gustafsson contract a couple of years ago, I think you'd look and be like, what are we doing here? Yeah. But it's worth the, I guess, if you want to call it this age, the potential risk, because of the fact that within the structure of the salary cap that the National Hockey League has, it's very fair. And that's where the Boldy contract, let's go back to that. He's going into year 3 of a 7x7. Are you kidding me? Yeah. Matt Boldy at $7 million per season. If Matt Boldy applies himself, he is a star power forward. A star. $7 million, Faber, year 2 of 8 years at 8.5. He should be your best defenseman. Mm-hmm. Eriksson Ek in year 5 of 8 times 5.25 is a ridiculous bargain. So that's the other thing, is now these contracts, I think there's going to be sticker shock about, oh my God, Kaprizov got this, but you got to sort of look at the salary structure of the rest of these teams. And you're going to realize that in some cases, contracts that looked very fair at the time are now as team friendly as it could possibly get.
And I think we're going to get to a point, Judd, where the sticker shock on the top end talent isn't going to be as bad, but it's going to be an interesting road of how long can teams take advantage of the middle to bottom 6 guys. Because right now it's, yes, Kirill Kaprizov, Connor McDavid, they can make 16, 17, 18, $19 million a year. But for instance here, if if Marcus Foligno was up for extension right now, I think 4 million, you could probably still get it done, maybe 4.5. He's still at 4 million for the next couple of years. And eventually, at some point, that contract for a guy like him, because they're going to realize, wait, I understand I'm not as good as these guys, but you still have more room to allocate me. My percentage against the cap should be the same. So that 4 million becomes 5, or maybe even at some point for a guy that's younger than Foligno, maybe even 6. And then that's where I think fans and analysts and talking heads are going to say, like, wow, what that's a crazy. Is this guy off his rocker offering 6 mil a year for that guy? That's just going to be what it is. So right now, and this is where I think the GMs are maybe a little ahead of the game, especially in this case, Bill Guerin, just because the point I already made, he's got some guys locked up. The first major sticker shock one that I think a lot of people had, and I think Wild fans are taking it a little more easily than I'm seeing some of the national media, which is 17 is a lot for one guy, but it's their one guy. And in 3 years, when it's, the 28-29 season, you're going to have other guys around that who have matched that or already extended it. I would bet you in 2 years' time, we have our first 20 mil a year NHL player. And then at that point, Kaprizov's going to look like a deal.
I agree.
So this right now is I don't know. I think it's a moot point for me. I don't care as much about the money. I think it's going to, in time, look a lot better. But your point from the top, which is the Wild clearly have had a plan, and as much as I think at times it can look like they are maybe discombobulated, or it's just like we're throwing numbers at a board, we're throwing contracts, extensions at people. They appear to have a plan that is build a certain way. And now, I mean, they left themselves a few paths, I think, for either trade deadline this year, moving into next year. You can potentially add somebody off season, and maybe they're not a matching 14, 15, 16 million dollar free agent, but it's somebody that probably can impact your lineup in a positive way.
It's going to be intriguing too, because, and Guerin's referenced this point, but at the trade deadline this season, are they going to make an attempt to acquire a player who is paid highly? And there's a lot of ways that you can go here, but and the Kaprizov contract of at 17 million, obviously not cheap. But the other thing too is now you can see a path to, and this is true for the entire league, you can see a path to fitting guys in as well. And this goes back to the changing economic structure that we saw play out on July 1st, the opening day of free agency, when it was supposed to be Christmas, and Craig Leopold had told us it's going to, and this was not Craig's fault, but the reality was, and I don't think the league was braced. I actually think the league is a little bit like league executives. Some of them are taken aback, but the reality was, and no one talked about this that I heard going into it, was on July 1st with the cap going up, a lot of teams are just like, well, I'll just keep my guy. Yeah. And it was like previously you made a deadline trade, right? The Avalanche get Brock Nelson, and it's like, okay, Brock Nelson's a pending free agent. He's going to come in and do his best for the Avs, and then they're not going to be able to afford him, and he's going to walk. Well, this was the first time in a long time that I can recall that a team was like, oh, we don't have to let you walk. Here's a contract offer. Yeah. And so, but it did feel like that went outside of just the fans. It felt like that surprised everyone, that, oh my God, basically so many of these guys went back. But if you want to make that the norm now as a team, you certainly can. And that's where the deadline is going to become more intriguing too, because with the increased potential flexibility, can you get a rental that you turn into a non-rental? So you could essentially double dip, have the best of both worlds, if that makes sense. Because previously, now it's always been, it's just a rental, and then that guy's gone. Yeah. But I think what we saw on July 1st was that doesn't have to be the case. So,
and that's where having a competent GM is going to be important, because like you may think, okay, we want to extend this guy, we think the term and value is going to be this, but then you get to July-ish and you're like, hey, here's what we want to offer you. And he's asking for, the moon plus. And you're like, well, now we just gave away in the Avalanche's sense, first round pick, et cetera, all this other stuff for a guy that we thought we could extend, but now he's leaving because we undervalued him.
And I guess the good thing about that for the team acquiring a player, for instance, if the Wild do it at the deadline this season, is the fact that you get a look-see. So that guy gets in your locker room in a very key time of the year, playoff run potentially. And so you get a look at that guy, how he fits in. If you like it a lot, you certainly can keep him. If you don't, you don't have to. But I'll also be curious to see if this impacts, I'm just thinking out loud here. Yeah. Does this impact the price of trades at the deadline as well? Because if I'm trading you a guy and I'm like, you're going to keep him too, do I try and get a little bit more out of the fact that I now know that what was previously just a pure rental process is a rental process with an option to buy?
I think that's a good question. I think for right now, I bet you it doesn't affect it too much because it would have to be very clear circumstances of like a GM openly stating, yeah, this is a guy that I think that we could probably, in talks, like we think he's a person for the future, or it depends on age. If you're trading for somebody 32, well, 32, you're still extending him, 33 plus, 34 plus, then I don't think so. But if it's a Rantanen, like we saw this last year, where he moved 2 teams in one season, maybe you could, but at the same time, you look at what happened with Carolina, where especially,
I'm thinking like to me, Brock Nelson, right? He's an older player, but you're like, I think you're going to keep him. And I'm not saying that it's not like the trade would change dramatically. I think what's going on right now is so fluid, and it might not be catching people totally off guard, but I think it is surprising them a little bit. So it's just like there's a lot of things happening right now that either A, aren't being digested well, i.e. the Kaprizov contract, or B, are just things that you didn't think about, like the fallout of the fact that the cap is going up, which at the end of the day is a good thing, but it does change things. And so I'm just trying to get ahead of thinking about how the thought processes here might change, because this cap has been flat for 3 years, or was flat for 3 years coming out of the pandemic. That's not normal, but it set up an expectation of that was life in the National Hockey League now, which will not be the case, which is a good thing going forward.
Yeah, there's going to be, there's going to be a landmine for some GM to step on, whereas a year or two in the road, it's like, wait, we have how much cap room to work with? We have X amount that we can just like spend more than normal. Yeah, let's throw these in that. And this is where you're going to have some of these middle tier, or maybe just like borderline top 6 guys get deals that are like, wow, I don't think he's that good of a player. And that's going to handicap a franchise. But this circles back to the Gus extension, the Kaprizov extension for the Wild with Bill Guerin, which is right now, when you look at it on paper, 17 mil starting next year is a lot. But I think when you look at everything in a vacuum for the Wild, you still have Matt Boldy. After this season into
year 3 of 7,
5 years, or how much right now?
How much would he get right now? And here's my question: Do we need to reverse engineer this entire discussion to say Kirill is 17, but if Matt Boldy hit the market today, I think he gets 10, 11. He gets 11. Like if he
I was gonna say 12, 13, 14.
Okay, so let's say he gets 12.
I'm higher.
If he gets 12, all right. Don't we sort of, in fairness, have to subtract that from Kirill's?
Mm-hmm.
So that's 5 extra. So really, at the end of the day, is Kirill 8 times 12, because Boldy should be 7 times. Yeah, because Boldy should be 7 times 12. My point is, you sort of have to take these contracts now and parse them apart, because I think your question's 1,000% right. If Matt Boldy is granted free agency today, let's say he gets 12, he might.
I really think he's worth that minimum, because if you look at if they're signing him to a long-term deal and it's 8 years, or even if it's 7 years, that's going to look great in a couple. But right now, I think it's clear that Bill Guerin loves him. He thinks that he can be, he's on record saying he thinks he could be a 50-50 guy, 15 goals, 50 assists.
Well, yeah,
I bet you that's worth $12 million a year to Bill Guerin. So I would say if he was a free agent today, that's probably the floor for him, I would guess. That makes everything so much, and that makes the Matt Boldy deal look so much better now, a few years removed.
Oh yeah. And if Boldy continues to play like this guy, So, but then I think it's fair to say that you should then subtract, because you are getting such a deal on Boldy, which I'm sure he's very pleased about. It's like, I signed this 7-year contract. It looked so great at the time, and now I'm being underpaid and potentially grossly. But so I think it's fair to say, like, factor that into the Kirill contract. So if you're getting a massive discount on Boldy, sort of discount from Kirill, because someone's going to get that, right? Like if Boldy and Kirill were both right now free agents, they would both cash in. So now you're really up against it. I got one more question. Yeah.
It's just like to talk about like the value there as well. Joel Eriksson Ek is making $5.25 million for the next 4 years. Is that the most team for? I mean, we've already said
it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Matt Boldy starting next year is closer to $3 million closer to Marcus Foligno, $10 million away from Kirill Kaprizov's AAV. Like that, he's significantly closer in AAV to a guy like Marcus Foligno, which and I'm not saying that Marcus Foligno is a bad player, but in terms of how they're signed to the cap, that is insane. It really just looks like good business by Bill Guerin.
Well, look at Faber.
That's
year 2 of 8 times 5. 8 times 5. He is an Olympic, 4 nations, all-star, in my opinion, right now, your best defenseman. So like all of these contracts, this cap as it changes and evolves, like I do wonder if we're ever going to have, not here necessarily, and hockey's such a team game, but do you ever have a holdout because somebody says my contract's ridiculous? Like, this is absolutely ridiculous. You know who would have done that? Bill Guerin. Bill Guerin was a hard ass. Good for him on his contract. But you know, if Matt Boldy has the year that I think he's going to have, and then he's like, I just completed year 3. I do have one more question, actually, to go back to Gustavsson and Wallstedt for you. But before that, I want to talk about my favorite place to go before a wild game. And that would be the Sports Dads Hangout Parlor Bar right down the street, West 7th from Grand Casino Arena. Why? Because, well, the burger is the first star. So like if I had to name the 3 stars of a game from Parlor, I would say the Parlor burger, obvious first star. That's your $17 million burger. Doesn't cost that much, which is a nice thing. Your second star, the chicken sandwich. I've told you about it for a long time. I absolutely love that. And then your third star, the Parlor staff, which is absolutely outstanding. So check them out before a game in St. Paul, right down West 7th from Grand Casino Arena, or they also have locations in the North Loop and out in Excelsior in the Western Burbs. That is their newest location. Check it out, Parlor Bar. All right, so here's my last question for you. What is your, just from taking the salaries out now and just talking about it, how do you think this Gustavsson extension impacts both in reality and mentally Wallstedt?
You know, I don't think he was going to be ready to like take a massive role this year. I bet you there was probably some sliver, because as much as he might enjoy Gustavsson as like a person and as a teammate and all that stuff, same thing in football where it's like, okay, young backup, at a certain point, I want to be the starter. I want to be the guy. I'm sure at some point, Jesper Wallstedt wants to be the guy. I don't think he grew up playing hockey in Sweden and doing all this other stuff just to someday become a backup in the NHL and play 24 games a year and be able to, you know, do whatever. He wants to be a starter and he wants to be a bona fide starter. And I think the extension dampens those hopes. Here's my thing. This is just pure speculation here, but I'm not sure Bill Guerin is still fully, and I don't think he should be, but I don't think he's fully sold on he's the prospect he drafted a few years ago. Coming off last year, it is shaky and rocky ground. So if Wallstedt comes out and really blows everybody away and shows that he is by far the best backup in the league and he's capable of being a starter, then that's one thing. Then we can have a different conversation. But as of right now, this extension, to me, lines up for potentially a Wallstedt trade. Only because I do think there's similar with the Wild's vision with David Jiricek, who, as we're hearing reports of, maybe isn't flashing as much as you would have hoped for a guy that and funny now that they got Damon Hunt back. So that deal looks a little bit different considering essentially you send him out on a loan. But But Wallstead is probably some GM's fixable project where they still value him very highly, that you could throw him in and get some, if you want to get a return at a trade deadline, because you can find another backup if he is capable of being that. But if you see flashes of, I can be a starter, I can be an elite goaltender for an NHL team, then that's where you revisit. He's 22. Let's not act like this is a decision they have to make this year, because I think, as much as I would love to see a hot goalie prospect make his debut and try to just take over the reins, you look at what other teams are doing. I think the ones that are probably very slowly eased into a project and really get their footing before taking that spotlight ends up working a little bit better. Spencer Knight with Florida is maybe the one exception, because I think he's a tremendous goaltender, but now he's been traded to a team that, and this is another thing, he, I think, has shown no doubt about it that he can be an elite goaltender in the NHL, and he still got moved, but that team did it because they wanted to win championships, and look what they've done the past 2 years. So this extension to me, I think, killed a little bit the vision I had once had, that when they drafted him, Jesper Wallstedt is the goalie, the Vasilevsky for the Minnesota Wild at some point moving forward. Not to say he can't turn that around and force Bill Guerin's hand to do something with Filip Gustavsson, but I would say for his morale and everything, I hope it doesn't knock down and push every bit of progress that he might have made this offseason after a tough year that he has stated he doesn't want to talk about anymore. And I think rightfully so. Hopefully that doesn't do a negative reversal of all that progress, and he can just be a goalie who can still be good and show I belong in this league, rather than now insecurities creeping in. I'm overthinking this, because that's what goalies do. I mean, they think about stuff a lot.
He's a thinker for sure.
And he's a real thinker from what we know. So it'll be really interesting to watch this play out, is the long-winded way of saying that.
I think among the things I'm curious about too now is, well, yes, how does he take this, or how does he process it? That's probably a better way to put it. But then also, how does Gustafsson handle comfort? That's the other thing. That's the other thing.
Down his neck. Yeah.
Well, and he talked about that. And I unfortunately, I hate that, especially with goaltenders. I don't want them to be not at ease, because that affects their play, but I also don't want them to be comfortable. We have seen guys in that position, in this town, get comfortable before. So, Gustafsson's first year here, prove yourself. Okay, played really well.
Yeah.
Really well. Second year, came back not in great shape. Was
the year.
A train wreck to start the year. And then last year came back in great shape, played well. So now you've got the security. You got 5 years. You got 3 years, 2 years of complete trade shielding. You're shielded from being traded. Yeah. So how do you, and then if you start to go south a little bit, can Wallstedt jump in there and supplant you? So I don't think anyone here should just have a free pass. It's not like you have, it's not like you've locked up a goaltender who is just, he's won you cups before, back in the day now, Vasilevsky. It's not like you locked him up. So there's a lot of things about this I'm curious to see from both sides. But I hope it lights a fire. I hope what it does with Wallstedt is, I hope it lights a fire there, and I hope he pushes him hard. And if Gus shows any signs of comfort, I hope they don't start Gus because, well, he's the guy that we signed. I do think that there is something, I think there's a very competitive now environment there, but it'd be foolish not to wonder what this does to both sides.
I think even next year too, moving forward, if he does stick around and show that he can be a player, I think keeping it under keeping it under 7 million is a lot easier, because accumulated next year, you got 9 million together against the cap for just the goaltender position. That's not that bad.
No, and they're starting to get paid again now.
Yes, exactly. So, and that's
where that's not bad at all.
Under 7, if you say, hey, we're going to ride the hot hand here for a week or two, I'm fine with that. Whereas if he was making 7.5 or something like that, it's like, whoa, you paid him to be your goalie. Let's have a conversation about this. So Yeah, it's I think you're right. You can't and I'll give Gus the benefit of the doubt saying that 3 years he was 24.
Mhm.
That's I mean, young, you're still
Yeah.
kind of getting into last year, past 2 years. You've had Marc-Andre Fleury, future Hall of Famer,
Yep.
kind of mentoring, show you how to do the daily NHL stuff, and that's something he's talked about. And last year, mid-season, he had a kid. He's a father now. Like a lot of stuff has happened in his life over the last couple of years that I think mentally he's probably more mature. He probably is more routine based, oriented, all that stuff. To where when it comes in and this from what
Right.
from what we're seeing and everything like that, I think preseason wise, he's also looked good. He's looked like the guy I think we expected, but there is that from our perspective, our chair, that doubt of you just don't know. We I want to wait and see, but I think I would probably, if I had to go one way or another on the fence, I bet you he probably shows up in a better condition, ready to play from day one.
All right, Judd's Hockey Show. Again, we'll be back midweek with our good friend Jesse Pierce to talk about the start of the season. Starts on Thursday. Talk about the new guys that made the roster, how we expect them to fit in, and much more. He's AJ. I'm Judd. We'll see you later.